Welcome to Life by Design for Chiropractors, episode 113.
Welcome to Life by Design, the podcast for chiropractors. Here's your host, Dr. Jamie Richards.
Welcome to Life by Design for Chiropractors. I'm your host, Dr. Jamie Richards. Today, Horatio and I discuss why you should start comparing yourself to others and how this plays a significant role in building a fantastic brand. We give you lots of examples and start the creative process in your mind so you can begin for yourself and start to really think about what other people are doing and how this ties into what you could be doing. If you haven't checked out Life by Design Training Camp, now is the perfect opportunity. We've just launched the September camp, so the numbers are starting to drop away. 7 out of 15 spots are taken, so we'd love for you guys to jump in. This is just one of the many, many conversations we have in helping you uncover A to Z what to do to build a retention-based practice. So enjoy today's episode of Life by Design for Chiropractors. Horatio, welcome to Life by Design for Chiropractors.
Happy to be here as always.
Yeah, nice that we do these video versions of it. We had a lot of great feedback on the first one. I got some DMs, and then Trent, shout out to Trent for leaving a comment. And, it wasn't a super nice comment, Trent, although the thumbs up for the material was, we're grateful for that part at least. But, keep the comments about our faces to yourself next time.
Don't tell my wife.
So we're talking today, the headline is start comparing yourself to others. And I know that can be shocking for people. So Horatio, why don't we start off with some context, how this applies specifically to the chiropractors who are listening in. I know that it's notorious in chiropractic to follow, the principle of self-sacrifice. I mean, basically all chiropractors have been told for the last 100 years, right? To sacrifice yourself for the betterment of chiropractic, to go totally in opposition to, this health freedom message that they're giving everybody else. But of course they need to sacrifice themselves for chiropractic along the way. And to, it's not good to compare yourself to others. But nonetheless, I forgot we're on video now. So any of these, so all these things that that we do that people have not been able to see up to this point. So, if you haven't seen this one on video yet, you might want to start listening there or watching there as well. But Chris, you'll give some context here to this idea of comparing yourself and why we think it's so valuable.
Yeah. So we've said this numerous times, but really I think the gift of chiropractic to, everybody is the idea that your body's not broken. Right? That, it's healthy. It's supposed to be healthy. It recovers. Excuse me. That's our nature. Right? So when we look at the mind, right, the way that the mind works, and this is not to say that some people don't have mental problems or mental issues that, are deranged mechanics, but the way that most of our mind works, it's not broken. Right? So when you have a tendency to compare and to contrast, that's just your mind being your mind. Like the way that you learn things is by comparing and contrasting, right? So when you say don't compare yourself to others, really the argument isn't, on the comparison portion, because that's your mind being healthy. It's the standards portion, right? So you want to make sure that you are setting the correct standards and context for which you're comparing yourself against other people. Is it motivation, right? We just did the Life by Design podcast and we talked a lot about, we were young basketball players when we thought we were cool at playing basketball, and we all looked up to Michael Jordan. We weren't trying to be Michael Jordan, right? So we're not necessarily comparing ourselves to Michael Jordan. We're just using him as inspiration, right? So there's that component of it. But then there's the one where you're like, oh, I'm going to try to be this person, or I'm going to try to do what this person is doing because I think it's a great idea. With those ones, you have to make sure you're using the correct standards with the correct context, or it is going to hurt your self-esteem and you could get into some trouble.
And the point that we're making in today's episode about comparing yourself is using that as a foundation for building a great brand.
Yeah. And again, right? So sorry to interrupt you, but okay, I'm going to use, let's take a business. I'm going to use Starbucks because Starbucks is a great brand. Right. So I can easily use Starbucks as motivation to say, hey, here's what Schultz did. Here's how we did it, which would be the right way, right? Like thumbs up.
Right.
Or I could say this chiropractic practice is going to be Starbucks. right? Like, and then just look at the ridiculous differences. There's not nearly, the chiropractic market is a fraction of the coffee drinking market, right? Howard Schultz he's a billionaire, so he has a budget of billions of dollars, right? He has public support, like none of these things that like any chiropractor would ever have or dream of having. So to become Starbucks is a ridiculous standard. To get motivated by Starbucks is an absolutely incredible, standard to use to set yourself up.
Where you started this conversation in the pre-show was that when we look at branding, I know that we had just written an email this week, and I think it went out. Well, it depends when people get to this podcast, but talking about how looking at other people, other brands, whether it be probably not other chiropractors, but looking at other brands, using
Depends.
potentially, yes. Hopefully, people look to us, and we look to other people who we respect and enjoy their content material. So, but even outside of chiropractic, the starting point of a great brand, at least one of the early pieces that you can do is, whether you call it a competitive analysis, whether you just call it looking for inspiration. You use Donald Trump as an example, and for a lot of people, that's a polarizing thought. We're not suggesting that, we agree or disagree. We're simply saying from a branding perspective, comparing yourself to some of the things that he's doing, you can start to understand what some of the foundations are of a great brand.
Yeah. So, I mean, like with this, like just, again, you have to be really clear on what it is that you want. I understand that Trump is a polarizing figure. Try this again. Understand that Trump is a polarizing figure and he creates a lot of emotion. If you're able to get your emotions out of the way and become an objective observer to what this individual is doing, probably automatically, he doesn't even know that he's doing it. You see the constructs of a really great brand and really good branding develop here. So there's a lot for us to learn right now. I definitely don't want to be this individual. So it's really easy to do that. But I mean, this is the start of it, right? Like, let's not forget that, when Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile, which was impossible, like within 6 months, 50 other people broke the 4-minute mile too, right? Because now you see what's possible because of this.
That's right. And, you made the point that really what we need to do is use comparisons of others from an objective standpoint. Yep. Right. And realizing, I know, say chiropractic, for example, for years, I thought, success was seeing 1,000 visits a week, having X number of new people, having a house or a car that looked a certain way. And that was really crushing because I wanted to be those people, or I wanted to have that practice, not necessarily looking at it as, okay, here's what's possible. And then what do I want, and mesh those two together. And then you start to look at, what other great things can I see, and, this brand, and how did I bring that into my own? But my point here is that it's good to compare yourself. And I think this is what we're battling against, is that people are unwilling to realize it's the brain's natural, normal processes to compare yourself. It's, you made the point on the other podcast that it's how you as a child differentiate between a chair and a table. You're judging. It's how you determine, you or me. That's you, that's me. That's a judgment. And judgment isn't necessarily bad. And we can use this to our advantage in brand building and brand creatives, because you start to see what, other people are doing, and we can use those to aspire to take parts of those and to build our own brand. And I think the big thing for me is that a great brand does exactly what you said, is it creates an emotional charge for people, either good or bad. And the better your brand is, I think you're going to have more people that love you and more people that hate you. And I don't know who said it, was Seth Godin or maybe Donald Miller, the Story brand. If people aren't hating you, then your brand isn't very good, right? Your brand is dead center in the middle. It's not affecting anybody, either good or bad. And although you might not have a lot of negative comments to deal with, and you think that, hey, I have no bad reviews, at the same time, you're also not generating or creating something, engaging and exciting.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot to unpackage there from what you said. But yes, when you're building a brand, the worst thing that you can be is vanilla, right? The worst thing that you can do is bore people to death, right? And unfortunately, there's a lot of this that exists in our profession. People who have, this would be the type of person who comes into your practice and says, I had a chiropractor, and they don't really remember anything about their chiropractic experience. They don't even remember the chiropractor's name, right? Exactly. Whereas, I think everyone has, either you are this person or there's somebody who's, the person in that community, right? When people come from that person, and I learned this early on in practice, it was, I had a horrible experience, so I'm here. Or, I really liked going to see them. It just doesn't work out anymore. So I'm here.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
I was going to say, I love, because this concept, as you said, is, can be unpackaged much more in detail. And one of the things that I always love when you go through this at training camp is, how people start off thinking exactly, what most do. And that's, well, I've got a good brand, I'm middle of the road, and they feel uncomfortable, right? As the conversation starts to evolve, I can see that they feel uncomfortable with even the thought of starting to incorporate, some of these concepts. What is it that you tell somebody? Like, how do you get them to be okay with starting to integrate some of this idea of being polarizing, getting, I think you use the word, the fringe? How does that start to, how is that okay? And I think that's the issue I see with a lot of docs when they come to camp is, in that part of the training and that conversation, they can't see themselves getting away from that middle of the road because they're really afraid of what people in their community are going to think of them. Or they think, getting to the fringe or having a polarizing idea means that they're going to be anti-vax or they're going to be, anti-medicine, and they don't want to do that either.
Yeah. So for the second one, I don't blame them because we're none of those things. Right. Correct. We are. So when we say, and again, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. There's people in chiropractic who have built their brand around that. And they have a really good brand, like whether I agree with them or not. Again, I'm being an objective observer here, right? Whether I agree with them or not, doesn't matter to this conversation. It's a good brand. Now, the issue with going that far, and what's never discussed by these people, which I wish actually was, it would give people some more context, is the further you go in that direction, it costs you a lot of things, right? There's lots of people who sit on that end who have lost their licenses. It's cost them their legacy. It's cost them probably lots of dollars, right? So it's an expense. You need to pay it to get there. Again, not saying there's anything wrong or right with getting that far. It's just not for everybody. You have to be the right person. Yeah. Now, our job is to make sure that you do have a good brand in your community. So what we are advocating is there are things, and I can give, one example. And again, training camp, we really unpackage everything, but there are things that your community is already upset about from, the medical machine or the way that they're treated by other practitioners that you can easily in a positive light, polarize your community to what you're doing really, really well, right? One of the most simple ones is having an examination process, right? Like the fact that you have a distinct, thorough, and required examination process. When somebody comes in and they're like, aren't you going to crack my back? And you're like, are you nuts? I have no idea what's happening. I need to be able to tell you what the damage is to your spine and nerve system and what it's going to take to correct that problem. That's a polarizing statement, which the vanilla chiropractor doesn't use because they're just thankful that somebody's coming in to see them. But what I'm saying is with that type of statement, which is a brand building statement, you can create something really exceptional and extraordinary in your community, and now apply the other, 10 to 12 things that we talk about and, things get rolling in the right direction.
Yeah. I think that's the point here, guys, for today is where this starts is you start by comparing yourself with other people. And I mean that you could look around your business, you can look around your community, you can do a competitive analysis, you can look at other great brands, and those things can start to get your brain going, start to feed into that creative process of just what it could look like for you. And of course, we really advise that, there's some guidance through the process. So you do have to be careful and kind of, I don't want to say tiptoe through it, but you could end up too far to one side where you start to suffer some of the consequences that Chris talked today. So
well, hold on. The biggest mistake, I can easily share this because this just gets you thinking. The biggest mistake when building a brand is we spend too much time talking about what we think is important, where we need to be talking about what they actually value and what's important to them.
Yeah, correct.
Right. Well, that's the biggest one.
You brought it up with Trump. All these people say that, he's the most hated man in America, and yet he had enough votes to win the presidency. So obviously it resonated with enough people. And this is not an endorsement one way or the other. It's simply saying, as an objective observer, clearly enough people felt that he connected with them or was solving a problem that they wanted solved. And you can think about that and compare that with what you do in your practice. And that can start hopefully prompting some inspiration for you. Believe it or not, you may not have come on today's episode thinking you're going to be inspired by anything Donald Trump was doing, or maybe you did. But, the fact is, comparing yourself to other people, as much as that seems like a moral negative, we take the position that it's actually not just good, but it's something that's inherent in your mind. So you might as well leverage it for the well-being of yourself and your practice. So guys, go to the show notes, lifebydesignforchiropractors.com/podcast. Find today's episode. And of course, thank you for listening to Life by Design for Chiropractors, the voice of reason in chiropractic.